For re-inviting me, and I also want to thank Nancy for her leadership as well, and I'm delighted to be back with you this morning. Some 6 weeks into my administration, and I'm enjoying myself. And many people who I meet as I travel around the county and the state, they first approach me and offer their condolences, and I'm a little set back and surprised when they do it, but I said, look, this is really the most exciting time of my life, and as a public servant, a person who a long time ago when I was in high school really decided to dedicate my life to public service, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do something very special for a very special group of people, and particularly young people who are the students in this district. Obviously, we have many challenges, but I always hasten to add the opportunities far outweigh the challenges that we face. And as I continue to work with my fellow employees, as I continue to work with our students and the stakeholders, parents and others, I'm convinced beyond any reasonable doubt that we will not just meet, we will overcome and far exceed what's necessary to address the problems that we face and to lay the groundwork for what I think will be a model 21st century public school system. We have made some significant progress in a very short period of time. We have a new board, at least 6 members, as well as the 3 members that were elected. And I want to recognize one of my bosses who's here today, Mr. Marshall Orson. Give him a hand. Also, our area superintendent, Superintendent Brixton, stand up, give her a hand. She does. And so we've been able to come in, and you know, it was a crisis situation. No one can deny that. But in any crisis situation, as I've said on many occasions, my first priority is not so much to focus so much on the crisis and the deficits. I always focus my attention on establishing and evaluating the assets that any situation might present. And the greatest number of assets we have are 99,000 students who are bright and who are ambitious and intelligent, and I've come to understand why my fellow educators who are here, and I know they're principals from other schools as well as teachers, you know, I thought I understood why individuals answer the call to be educators. I'm beginning now to fully appreciate that urge or that desire. And it's really the children. It is so exciting to be around young people. When I visit the schools and just get a chance to walk the halls when the classes change, and I guess I'll get over this in a few weeks. But I don't know, but that just thrills me. And just to hear the excitement and the chatter and the joy in the voices, and even to visit classrooms. I've had the opportunity, and the instructors are very kind, and they will allow me a few minutes to actually stand before a class and teach for a few seconds. And I've enjoyed that as well. And that's in North, DeKalb, South, East, and West. Some of the decisions that have been made, I think, are good decisions. Number one, they have been concerned. As you know, I hosted several town hall type meetings around DeKalb County, where employees, particularly educators, teachers, and all staff members actually were allowed to ask questions and to question me, to provide insight, direction. Well, out of those meetings, we've been able to make some decisions that I think will serve the district well going forward. Number one, there was a concern regarding the Success for All reading program. Among many teachers, some honestly thought that it was a great program, but the great majority were concerned about how the process that was used to determine the adoption of the program or the use of the program in the DeKalb County School District. So what we decided to do, and I think it has been well received by educators across the district in the elementary schools, is that we now have resurveyed the teaching population to get their input, and what we're going to do, and I don't think the survey is completed yet, but we will now look at it on a school by school basis as well as opposed to a district-wide basis. And there were some schools, some principals, some teachers who thought it was a great program that provided an important resource, but there were others who not. So rather than go into a one-size-fit-all proposition, we're going to allow educators to make that decision. Secondly, there have been concerns raised particularly by parents as it relates to the balanced calendar. I tell people on the day that it was announced that I would be the interim superintendent, my neighbor from across the street, I went out to pick up the newspaper, and he rushed out of the house and said, "I hate the balanced calendar, you gotta change it." And at that point, I wasn't quite sure what the balanced calendar was, but I promised him I would investigate. And he always waves and smiles now. And so what we decided to do was to delay implementation at least until the 2015 school year, to give us the opportunity to re-engage parents, teachers, other stakeholders, to make sure that when we make decisions, we're doing the right thing. And I think that was the proper task. And you know, the ultimate decision is still out, but as you know, whatever we do, the ultimate outcome should be to enhance academic and career achievement. And the research was really inconclusive as to whether or not the balanced calendar really did that. Thirdly, beyond that, on the upcoming board meeting, one of the things, among others, and Marshall is here, and I have to give him credit, you may have noticed that board meetings are being conducted in a different manner these days. And y'all give him a hand, because he played a big role in that. But one of the things that's on the table that will be voted upon at the next board meeting was another issue that resurfaced time and time again. Stakeholders, instructors, you name it, was a concern regarding nepotism in the district. That employment and even promotion was being influenced not by productivity or accomplishment, but by familial connections or personal relationships. I'm not one to respond quickly based on what I hear. I'm a researcher by heart, and I'm not sure people know that. I love the research. And so I said, okay, well, let's research the policy and see where we stand as it relates to nepotism. Well, what we found out was that the DeKalb School District did not have a policy prohibiting nepotism. The word was not used in policy anywhere. And so at the last board meeting, we presented, and by the way, we asked you to comment on it because it's now being another policy we implemented, was that whenever new policies are introduced, they will lay on the table at least until the next official board meeting so that we can get citizen input. Well, we have a policy that I think is concise and comprehensive, and a commitment from this administration, not just to have a policy on the book, but to enforce it. And this policy will, I think, go a long way to restore trust in our hiring and promotion process throughout the district. Very proud of those three things. But the big issue that's looming for us, for me as the superintendent, for the board, and for the district, is the FY 2014 budget. We began last night at the board meeting. We discussed the parameters. The board laid out some parameters, some markers that we should at least try to reach as we develop the 2014 budget. And there were some realities that we have to face. For instance, based on recent legislative decisions, we will have an increase of about $16 million in expenditure, mostly health and retirement benefits that the state is dictating. And in politics, and you know, I put on my politician hat, those what we call unfunded mandates will increase expenditure before we make any single decision by some $16 million. Based on what my fiscal office has said in discussions with the DeKalb tax assessor's office, revenues, at least the state ad valorem tax, county ad valorem tax revenues will be flat, about $730, $40 million. So our costs have increased, our revenues are flat. We will get a slight increase in revenues from state government because we've had an increase in the student body. Bottom line, we'll have more expenditures than we will have revenues. Now, you read the paper this morning. This is not unique to DeKalb County. we're looking at, before we make decisions, we have a deficit or excess, a deficit really of about $16 million, right? But I count my blessings, because I read the paper this morning and in Cobb County is looking at a deficit of what? About $90 million. Am I right? $80, $90 million. They're looking at a deficit that represents about 10% of his budget. What we're looking at now, before we go to work, is a deficit of about 2%. Okay, well, y'all ought to give us a hand for that. That's not, at least acknowledge it, right? Especially when the narrative is being that the most fiscally irresponsible district in the world supposedly is located right here, where? In DeKalb County. What you're finding is that obviously we can make better decisions. We will make better decisions. We've made mistakes in the past, but some of the challenges we face are not just DeKalb specific. When you have a property tax base that declines by $7 billion from the beginning of the recession to right now, the overall ad valorem tax base in this county has declined by $7 billion. When we and you recognize that the state has continued to reduce its investment in local public education, this creates a fiscal challenge, but it's a challenge that I volunteered to face. So I don't ask for any sympathy, but we must recognize where we are. Now, the one thing that Orson and Dr. Johnson and the board members made clear is that they want a real focus, a laser-like focus on increasing resources to classroom and instruction. That is the priority, and nothing else will become close to reaching the level that they have suggested that we should follow in increasing revenues to the classroom, to instruction. Because ultimately that's the business we're in, educating our children, right? And so we will be scouring, we have been scouring the budget at every nook and cranny to make sure that every dollar we do have will be invested in that direction. So that's where we are. I will report that we have a 26-person team that's responding and working every day to prepare for the upcoming SACS visit in May and next month of this year. I'm looking forward to SACS revisiting the DeKalb County School District. I really am. And I think when the SACS monitors show up, they're going to find a district that's focused on academic achievement, a district that's focused on the business of educating our children, a district that has learned from past mistakes. See, I believe this. You should learn from your mistakes, but you don't dwell on them. It's a huge mistake to dwell on past mistakes and failures. You learn from them and move on, and that's what we are doing, that's what we have done, and that's what we'll continue to do. Dr. Elgard, I invited him out, I guess a week ago now, maybe 2 weeks, to meet and talk directly to the board, to myself, and to the stakeholders. It was a great meeting. He was very honest. He was very forthright and specific about his ideas, his expectations, and nothing he said surprised me, and none of the things that he mentioned should be addressed that I don't think will be addressed and are not being addressed. And I was happy to note that at the conclusion of his presentation, and he spoke in the media, and it was covered in the media, that he stated that it was unlikely that DeKalb would lose its accreditation at the end of this year, based on what he has seen and what he knows to date. And I think that's very important, because when I was brought here, the issue that hung like a fog was that we were close to losing our accreditation as a district. And it's not just anything I did. We got a great board. We refocused our attention, and now we're moving in the direction that's going to remove the status of probation from that accreditation. With that, I'll stop and try to answer any questions you might have. Yes, ma'am.
An 8th grader at Henderson Middle School in the middle of CRCT testing this week. He knows, because his teachers told him, that CRCT testing is 2 weeks earlier this year because you don't have the money for summer school. So the teachers have had to stop instruction even earlier this year in order to do the testing earlier so that you can remediate, the few students that need that. I mean, that speaks poorly about the budgeting and about the fact of loss of instruction. And also, our teachers are stressed about the new, what do you call it, the teacher evaluation system.
Keys.
So where are we with the race to the top funds and teacher evaluation? And is DeKalb doing that on its own? Are we in a pilot program with other counties?
But that was a race to the top meeting, follow-up funding that may be available for the DeKalb. But let me go back to the budget, the money issue. These are issues confronting every district, right? And one of the things, as a researcher and a historian, I was interested in where and when did these financial issues first manifest themselves in DeKalb County. It didn't happen in 2011, it didn't happen in 2010. We first began to experience financial issues, or at least a shortfall in revenue in 2001. This has been an ongoing, slow-moving crisis that has not really been confronted and addressed for more than a decade. Now, ultimately, as always, the chicken come home to roost. And one of the things I noted as I went around the county, and obviously our teachers have not received raises in, 5 or 6 years. Many of our professionals, our psychologists and social workers, they were cut, people on the bus drivers, you name it. Everybody has suffered as a result of lack of resources, lack of money. I mentioned the economy, and I mentioned the fact that property values have declined. I mentioned the fact that the state is appropriating fewer dollars to support local school districts. But all of that is real, but it's not an excuse, right? Now, we're going to come out of this. We're going to get out of this. But I have to tell you, we're not going to get out of it in FY14. This crisis that has been ongoing, unaddressed really since 2001, will not be resolved in FY14. It's going to be a long and difficult path back to financial and fiscal health. But the point is, the journey of 1,000 miles began with a single step. You have to start. And decisions could have been made better as it relates to summer school, whether that was one of the items that should have been cut. Let me tell you, everybody who's been cut has told me one thing for certain, that my program, my salary, my initiatives should not have been where? On the chopping block. That's just a fact, and I understand it, and I would get it. We are on our way back to fiscal health. We're going to generate revenue that we didn't have. One of the things, I was talking to Orson and another, I know we got one attorney in the room. This year, we're spending over $10 million in attorney's fees. We're not going to do that in the FY14. It's just not going to happen. We're going to mention, and I've already served notice on all of our returns. That is not going to happen. But that will manifest itself going forward. In the interim, we have to build from the bottom up. We have to build from the bottom up. Learn from the mistakes, don't dwell on them, and move forward. Those are the ways we're going to improve academic excellence. Now, we got to look at a budget again. Now, I'm going to have a different set of priorities because the board has a different set of priorities. Because this board, I don't know what the last board decided, but this board decided what number one priority must be classroom instruction. So that means that the summer program may, and I can't guarantee it, have a different priority associated with it in FY14 than it did in FY13. And I understand. But like I said, I have a different focus in a different direction. Now I'm inviting everyone to come out to the budget hearings too. Those are going to be important, and they're listed on our website. I don't have the date, boys, and you may have them in your head, I don't. But please come out, and I'm coming right to you, and voice your opinion in terms of how this budget is developed. Look, we don't have all the money we need, but $740 million is still a lot of money to do the things that you really prioritize need to be done. Yes, sir.
My name is Kirk Lundy. I have a couple of things. First, the budget meetings are next week, Tuesday and Thursday at 6 o'clock at the conference room, the boardroom where the board meetings are held. So that's where the public budget meetings are going to be. A couple things, and I know again, you said that these aren't decisions you made, but these are things that I think as you address the budget going forward, teachers have not gotten a raise, but if you look at the salary ranges for central office employees, they have moved up. Salary ranges for district superintendents has moved up in the last 2 or 3 years. Is there any possible way of moving those back? Because other people have gotten raises in the district, but the teachers have not. And is there a plan to look at the people who are paid over the top of their salary range? There are people in the district who are being paid in excess of the maximum for their salary range. We need to identify why that is, what they're doing to deserve that money, and figure out if we need to continue to do that. Thank you.
Great question. One of the things we presented last night to the board, just as a resident of DeKalb, long before I was called to this particular position, based on the narrative that, number one, DeKalb has a bloated central office, right? You've heard it. I hear it all the time. So over the past 2 weeks, and we presented it at the board, we looked at all the 14,000 plus employees we have in the district, right? And I wanted to know what percentage of those employees, state funded, general fund funded, actually work in the central office. What was presented last night based on the research is that 6% of the total number of employees actually work in the central office. I was shocked. I didn't believe it. I said, you go back and check it again. I don't believe that the number is just 6%. I invite you all to come to the public hearing that the gentleman referenced. Now, maybe it should be 3%. It should be 4%. But it's not 20%. It's 6% as it's presently constituted.
Do you have a list of who that is?
Yes. It was presented to the board last night.
Can we get that list of all those employees?
It will be presented at the hearing next week. I invite you to come. I think this gentleman was next, and then I'll come to the lady, my attorney friend in the back.
My name is Michael Burke. I'm with Safe Passage Network.org, and our main concern is the militarization of our youth. And, you know, the last time anything happened in the DeKalb County School District was the Marine Corps Academy that they were going to open as a public school about 4 or 5 years ago. And we fought it tooth and nail, and so did the not in my backyarders, as they're referred to in most cases. My question to you is, what are your feelings on the military being in our public school? And I'm not talking about just high school, I'm talking about K through 12, because we have documented cases where the military do come in and do their dog and pony show and try to impress kids at a very young age so they can follow and right up the line. And of course the Marine Corps is most aggressive in this resort, and so is the Army. I'm not talking about Navy and Air Force so much. And I say this as a 10-year veteran of the Army. I am not an anti-military person, but I think we need to do something about the encroachment of the war industry in our public school classrooms.
If I understand your definition of militarization, I'm not certain, because I've visited several of our high schools, and I have to be honest with you, I've been very impressed with our ROTC program by the men and women who serve as the leaders, as well as the young people who participate. Just through my own, and of course, we have to all appreciate the service that our men and women are providing this country, especially at this moment in time when we see a nation under attack. from terrorists. And so I have seen our ROTC programs, if that's what you're referring to. What are you, I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Talking about recruiters, talking about military recruiters.
I think that's a career path that some people, some young people, along with the advice and consider their parents, may choose to pursue.
In the sixth grade?
That the kids and their parents, because at the end of the day, whether a child goes to college or technical school, whether he or she moves into the workplace, those are decisions that parents and children have to make jointly and together with advice from individuals in the school district. And I think it's ultimately up to the parent of the child to help determine what career path he or she might pursue.
That is not the issue. Okay? I'm talking about, plain and simple, what are your feelings about the military being given free access to our public schools at every level, K through 12?
Well, first of all, I don't have any facts personally to suggest that that's true. But I have no problem with representatives of the military coming to recruit young men and women on the campuses of our, in the school district. I don't.
At what level?
I'm not aware that they've gone into first grade classes or kindergarten classes.
But what is your respectable level?
It's up to a parent. If a parent has a problem with it, then I would address it. It would be a parent of a child.
I think that's passing the buck, sir.
Well, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for being here. I'm Shana Steinfeld, and to many in the room, this is going to be very familiar. I want to dovetail into two issues that have come up already. I want to really say thank you very much, and thank you, Marshall, for the nepotism policy that's long, long overdue. My question is that going to be retroactive, and are you going to look at people already on staff to whom the policy might apply, or are they going to be exempt? So that's one facet of my question. The next facet is the familiar part to everybody here, and that is the audits. The county has the infamous audit from 2004, and there's a requirement, I believe, that there's supposed to be an audit done, kind of a forensic audit every 3 years. And as best we know, as we being general public, that's the last audit that's been done, which was now a long time ago. The 2004 audit showed problems, and as best we can also tell, it was kind of sort of suppressed. I think going to your question as to the problems going back financially to 2001, which is before the 2004 audit, I hope I'm not losing you here, the problems predate the 2004 audit. I think if you were to be able to get, I think it's Ernst & Young, to find that 2004 audit, that might enlighten you as to where the problems stem from, and it might dovetail into the nepotism issues, and if we can update that audit to today, that might be very enlightening in trying to figure out where these financial problems are coming from and where we might find some money going forward. And I'm not a financial person, I'm a bankruptcy person, and my specialty, if you will, is in turnaround and the missing money maybe. And I think maybe there's missing money in there, and I encourage you to try to find it.
Well, thank you. Your former question, and being a distinguished and esteemed member of the bar, it is almost constitutionally impossible to implement a retroactive law or policy. Because then you would have to decide how far back. Do we go back to the 20s, the 30s? So the statute, the policy that's being proposed, will be effective on the date that the board passes it. And so it will address any hiring or promotion or contracting that occurs from that day forward. It's prospective as opposed to retrospective. A retrospective statute would create chaos, to be honest with you. And at some point, you learn from your mistakes, but you move on. Secondly, as it relates to the audit, there are several audits done not just by private auditors, but also the state of Georgia. And it's interesting, for instance, the most recent state audit, there was some recommendations, but it was an unqualified audit. It found no fundamental issues wrong with the financial accounting process at the state, with the DeKalb School District. But there were recommendations, and you know there's a difference in recommendations as opposed and unqualifications or unqualified audit. There's a KPMG audit with some issues. We're going to look at all of them. Right now, though, I have to get a budget done. See, that's one of the things that's challenging about this. And I talked to the board about it last night. And the desire, my deep desire is to solve all these problems today. And everybody can walk away happy and say it's over. This is a long-term process. No magic wands, no silver bullets, no magic elixirs. All right? So even the budgeting issues will take time. Right now, I'm ending one budget cycle, trying to make sure we have the budget balanced for this fiscal year, which is FY13. We will have to have a new budget in place by July 1st, which is about, 8 weeks from now. All of this has to happen, and it will happen. What I said to the board last night is that part of the strategic plan will be what is the way forward. And my goal when I show up at work every day is that this district will be a little bit better, a little more efficient, a little more successful in educating our children. I know for a fact that every day we go there, we're going to work to find some way to improve what we're doing. If it's nothing more than coming out and speaking to interested parents and stakeholders. If it's nothing more, as we did last night, and giving the board, providing a more transparent view of the resources that we do have. And on next week, when we have a budget hearing, you will get information that you have not seen before. And you will have it in a format where you'll be able to evaluate it independently, and I think make even better conclusions about where we are as a district in terms of the decision being made. That doesn't generate news coverage, but that's important in a district where trust, quite frankly, is at a very, very low level. So in answer to your question, I'm looking at all of the audits. One of the things we're going to do beyond the budget is that I mentioned this 6%. And I know people say, oh, Michael, you crazy. There's no way it's 6%. It just can't be. Right? I don't believe it either. But the point is, of the 6%, how many of those job functions do we really need? Are there any redundancies? Like, can people be reallocated or reassigned to where their skills and talent might be better utilized? So there are many ways to approach this problem. One of the things you will see is that we are going to decentralize more authority and focus and direction to the regional school level. You're going to have regional area superintendents like Ms. Braxton in the rear making more, I think, decisions or helping to make decisions with our principals who are closest to the point of delivery of the service, which is education. So even if it's 6%, you will have fewer people assigned and working at the central office in FY14. That's just a personal belief I have. That, and in those of you in corporate America, in any business, you know that decisions are more effective or more efficient the closer they are made to the point of the delivery of the service, the greater the probability is that you will have a decision that makes more sense. And so that is one of the areas that's going to change about the DeKalb Tuesday. Look, we have many populations. It's impossible to sit on Mountain Industrial Boulevard and understand the fundamental basic needs of 138 campuses and schools around this district. One person can't do it. Just can't do it. For instance, this lady is doing a great job, and because she's doing such a great job, I'm going to make her job bigger. You're happy, right?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm Don Broussard. About 5 years ago, I was co-president of the PTA in Lakeside. You have an opportunity in the next month or so to fill a principal position there. I was part of an earlier change in 2007 where school council and the PTA were involved in advising the superintendent, Mr. Lewis. A disastrous selection was made. I'm going to draw an analogy to, if you're an admiral and your schools are ships in your fleet and high schools are your aircraft carriers, principals are captains of those ships, and you need the best principals you can find in charge of those high schools. It's important, I think, that this selection, and not just at Lakeside, but all the principals, your system, no doubt, must have a half dozen positions you usually typically look at that you're going to have to fill in the next couple of months. I just want to emphasize how important it is, and everything I have learned, that you get the best principals in those positions and let those principals do their job with a minimum of interference. So I would like your reaction to that, but I also more specifically would like your view as to what is a proper role for school councils and PTA officers to play in advising you all about your selections for those important jobs. Do you have a feeling for that?
Yes. Well, to your first statement, you said nothing I disagree with as it relates to the importance of principals and area superintendents in terms of managing and running schools. Yesterday, I was at Anderson Middle School. I was so impressed with the principal there. I mean, she's phenomenal. I'll segue that into your second comment, but I was also at Thurmond, and you got a great principal there who just happened to be sitting in the room. And I talked to both of these individuals about really your second comment and the importance of PTSA and the councils and just parental engagement. And what will change? And one of the, I asked Ms. Coward, who's over the DeKalb PTSA, and my academic staff to inventory every PTSA in the district. Right? I want it as associated with schools. If you look at the high-performing, successful schools, you got great leaders, involved teachers, but let me tell you the one thing that's even more important, I think. You have very active parent association. It doesn't matter whether the school's in North DeKalb, whether it's at Arabia Mountain, or Harris Elementary, or any of the charter schools, the one thing that remains constant are the parents. Someone asked me what I did over spring break, and I said, well, I didn't do anything. But what I did do, I spent that time researching the correlation between student achievement and parental engagement, right? And in your spare time, just Google it. You know, the internet is wonderful. Page after page after page after page after page, study after study after study after study. You need great superintendents, and you need school board members who don't claw and scratch each other's eyes out once a month. You know, that helps, Marshall. You need outstanding leaders as principals. You need engaged and qualified teachers. But all the studies say the greatest influence is none of these people. The greatest influence is what? Parents. And so when you have schools where you don't have parental engagement, it's hard to find a high-performing school where you don't have the engagement. If you look at the charter schools, and the public charter schools as well as the private, and there's this debate about whether they're better than the traditional public schools, the one really thing that distinguishes charter schools is what? Involvement is mandatory. And whether it's at Henderson, or whether it's at Thurmond, or here, you got parents engaged. So, to your question, we've inventoried the entire district. So you have schools with 800 parents active in the PTSA, and then you have schools with 20, or 30, or 0. So then I look at, okay, where are the resources? In the Title I schools with the Title I money, you have to spend at least, what, 1%. So we spend about $3,800 in each school, regardless as to whether or not the parents are active or not. That's going to change. We're going to have a much more aggressive, involved investment and focus on getting parents involved. Look, our teachers are maxed out. The big mistake all of our teacher organizations have made, and all the stakeholders who support them, is we allow well-meaning politicians to dump basically all the responsibility for educating our children on them. I watched from the 80s, when I was a young legislator to today, I saw it happen. I was there. I came to the legislature a year after QBE. That's how long I've been around. Okay? And I've watched the standard, and I'm not against standardized testing totally, but you know, I've watched it say, but then when the studies tell me it doesn't matter if the parent's not engaged. So, and I don't believe, and by the way, most of the lack of activity are in neighborhoods or low income and poor neighborhoods. It's just hard. You look at the schools and you look at the parental engagement, and there's a correlation. Not all, but in most of you, where you don't have engagement, is low income and poor neighborhoods. Now, let me tell you something I know that people should understand. Poor parents love their children just as much as the rest of us love our children. Now, the assumption that some make is, well, if you're not engaged and either you're not concerned, you don't love them, I don't buy that. I'm not buying it. And so what we're going to do is very aggressively support groups like this, right? These schools that you all represent are successful in large part because what? Parents, because of you all. You can summon the superintendent twice in 6 weeks. Right, ladies? And text him at 12:30 at night and said, make sure you here, right? Which is what Allison did last night. And get a response. But we have to train, teach, help, inspire, encourage other parents to be like you are. Because the only way we make the district better, when you live heavy objects, you got to live from the bottom.
But Mr. Thurmond, parental involvement will not change the situation where the principal can't make a decision or doesn't show up on time for work. I know principals that have those problems in this district. If you want their names, I can get you.
But I tell you what, you let the principal at Henderson and Fernbank not show up. All heck will break loose. Am I right? It happens because we and parents allow it to happen. Would you let it happen at your school? See, and I don't know what's so complicated about this. The problem is, and I'll just say it, we have to believe, literally believe, that all of these kids, all of our children can actually learn. And everyone has to be invested. The teacher and the principal can't do it. I don't care how engaged that principal is, or how smart he or she is. If he or she is there by herself with a 10-person PTSA, it's going to be hard for he or she to be successful. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to ask, what are some of the aggressive things that you plan on doing to get those schools engaged, the parents engaged in helping uplift that school to provide a more enrichment program for the students in those areas? I'm just...
That's a great question. No, that's a great question. That's a great question. It's not foreign territory to us. Let me say that. One of the, and I know that was a debate over whether I should even be here. Whether you needed an experienced educator, someone who spent his or her career in the classroom. And that's a legitimate argument. Okay. I will need, and I will continue to need help in that direction. But also, if you're asset driven, you have a person who's very familiar with the term. You have a person, by the way, who led welfare reform in Georgia. And I remember in 1994, the great majority of the population felt that poor people on welfare were there because they were lazy and didn't want to work. All right, we all remember that because I went all over the state of Georgia. And folk were telling me, said, man, you going over to Oakwood and you're going up to Dunwoody? I said, no, that's nothing compared to going around Georgia in neighborhoods and telling folks, well, you know, that's over. Y'all kind and sweet compared. So, but let me tell you what happened. In Georgia, 120,000 women primarily got up and walked off and went to work. Now, we didn't circle back to see what happened, for those of us who was slandering and sending out the innuendo, but you can inspire and encourage people to do what's in their best interest. Part of it is, we assume that parents know, even some parents here at this school know, number one, Why should you attend the parent-teacher conference? What's the purpose? We assume that parents know, but you know, you can have a baby and you don't have to apply for a license to be a parent, do you? You don't have to take a test. And so what we are going to do is educate people to their best interest. See, we're all self-interested, and I talk about it a lot, as we should be. We're all self-interested about our kids. And I encourage every parent, every guardian, every grandparent to be self-interested about your daughter, your son, your grandson, your granddaughter. And you shouldn't apologize to anybody about that. Now, what I also encourage you to do is to engage in what I call enlightened self-interest. When you become interested in other people's children, you all could teach other parent groups how to do this right. There is no wall that separates North DeKalb from South DeKalb. I've been driving around looking for it. They said there are lines, but then I can't see them because they're invisible.
It is proposed, right, that wall?
Apparently it is. It may be proposed, but you know, wherever I go, I run into the same thing. I run into mothers and fathers who love their children and want the best from them. Some of us, you, have more resources, have more opportunities to do just that. Some people have less. So what I'm encouraging you all to do, I'm asking you to help me make this real. And see this, now the studies say that this is the most important element. Now check me out. Go do the research for me, right? And the cost is minimal. We could be a lot more successful at a relatively small cost if we just increase participation of parents. And I know what you say, well, you know, I don't know math. Heck, I can't do 5th grade math either. I don't know about you all. It's hard. I'm a lawyer. You know, I can do like 33 1/3. That's my cut. I can do that well, right? 5th grade math is a challenge, right? But what we have to teach parents is being present is more important than having the technical abilities. You all heard me talk about my dad. You heard me talk. He was illiterate. He couldn't read or write. But the man sat there all the way till I figured it out. My mother told me in middle school that he was not literate. I was a grown man. I figured it out though. It had nothing to do with his ability to do math or understand science. The fact that he was present in the room. The power that you have when you show up at your child's school, it's your presence. Most children are going to act better, aren't they? At least while you're in the room. Most of them, not all of them. So that's what we have to do. And I know this sounds pie in the sky, but you all watch. We're going to transform how we do this business based on objective, independent research. Yes, sir.
My name's Ralph Carl. I'm a 10th grader at Lakeside. He's been in the system for, I guess, 11 years now. Parental involvement is even more directed when we have accurate information to go on. Since the first of the year, the school system has provided financial information for the first time. We've got annual budgets, annual expense reports. We don't have minutes for board meetings, but we've got items, agenda items available. And I noticed an agenda item from the March 20th meeting that you had was for modular classroom, a lease extension approval. This was for 14 modular classrooms for Clarkston, Redan, and Vanderlyn Elementary School. It was a 6-month extension. The price was $15,870 a month. Total of $95,200 and change, which comes to about $6,800 per classroom for a 6-month period. I was just wondering how long we intend to roll over these leases and how often we're going to pay and pay and pay for a mobile home with nothing in it.
That's great. Now, I think our minutes are posted on a much more consistent basis thanks to Mr. Lunt. Stand up, man. This man, you might want to tell him about the minutes, and hopefully we're doing better.
The minutes are posted on the e-board. Minutes are posted on the e-board, but they're only posted for business meetings, not all meetings, not the work sessions. And you have to go to the meeting following the one that you're looking for when they approve the minutes. So the minutes from the March 20th meeting are found on the April 1st meeting. You go through the agenda. There are 9 steps. One of the secretaries for the Board of Education emailed me the 9 steps to find them. I put them on the Parents for DeKalb Schools Facebook page. So if you scroll down the comments, you can find the 9 steps there. But the minutes are posted, but your point is well taken. And while I have the microphone, I'm going to ask. The planning department recently recalculated the capacities of each school. That followed along with a recall of the trailers, not all of the trailers, but part of the trailers. The question comes to mind, was the planning department aware of the recall of trailers before they went to the March 20th meeting and asked the Board of Education for a blank check to purchase as many trailers as they wanted to? But that's the local 5-year local facilities plan by the State of Georgia Department of Education requirements requires a plan to eliminate the use of trailers.
Right.
So speaking to his point, we know that the capacities of the schools were inaccurate before. We know that putting 40 high school students in a classroom sized, built for 28 is not a good idea. If we are going to put children and high school students, put students in classrooms appropriately for the space required, and this touches on another topic, which is the special ed space, which we're not, but there are laws saying how much space is supposed to be for each student. DeKalb County is not following those rules and those regulations at this time. Going forward, do you anticipate seeing a lot more trailers, or do you anticipate a plan to eliminate the use of trailers as the Department of Education says we should be doing?
Well, and to your question, and as you know, the voters approved a $500 million capital campaign for the DeKalb School District. Right now, at the moment, we have some $200 million in projects ongoing. At that meeting, and I'll get Mr. Wilkins to talk to you specifically. He presented a very detailed plan for the first time for DeKalb to begin to address the trailer leasing issue. And there are trailers in this county that we have leased for over 2 decades. Right? And for the first time now, we have a detailed strategy to end the leases, or at least purchase trailers, and utilize less of them going forward. I can't go into the detail because I'm not as familiar with it, but I'd love to have him to call you this afternoon, and I think you will be pleased that finally we have a plan to reduce the use of trailers, save money by leasing, and some of these trailers we've been leasing now for 20+ years. We purchased them 4 and 5 and 6 and 10 times, and they are literally worth nothing. But finally, there is movement, and I will, if you give me your card and your number, I have Mr. Wilkins to call either both of you or one of you, because you were at the meeting when he discussed it, I think.
I like Mr. Wilkins a lot, but I would appreciate it if you ask him to respond to his emails.
Okay.
He doesn't need to call me, just respond to his emails. That would be helpful.
Email me and tell me that Mr. Wilkins not responding. That generally works at the district office. I'll take a couple more, and yes ma'am, to my left, she's been very patient.
Hi, I'm Barbara Arney, and my last of 4 is a 9th grader at Lakeside. And I want to respond to, segue onto 3 things people said. First, for Mr. Broussard, there is currently a board policy pending, and you have until the 19th to talk about and respond about the change in the policies for school council and how the superintendent and the parents will relate. To the military question, just for information for you, There is a form on the DeKalb website, and every parent has access to it to sign it to prevent and block any information being given to any military person at all. And lastly, to Shayna's audit, there may be 6%, and that may be great. We may be able to be more efficient, but I think part of what the audit showed is that people in positions in DeKalb holding those positions are paid significantly more than comparable in the corporate world. So I hope you'll look at that piece of the puzzle. And my question is, if the principal at Henderson is great, and I believe she is, and if the principal at Lakeside is great, and I believe he is, then I would hope that someone in the school system would trust them when they say, you are not giving us the staff we need for next year. So I want to go back and give you some history. For over 5 years that I'm aware of, we start the school year with not enough staff because we've been told that we don't have enough points. So last March in 2012 at Emory Lavista, I asked the Deputy Superintendent for School Support, Ms. March, would we actually do something about our staffing going forward that was realistic? And I gave the example of Henderson Middle School. We knew we had X number of 8th graders going out, and we knew we had X number of 6th graders coming in. And what we were being told we would get for staffing was not reflective of what our actual enrollment was going to be. The same happened for Lakeside. We get into October and November, and we still do not have staff. There are two options for principals. They can either hire a long-term sub so they can divide the classes out the way it needs to be, and we can hire a long-term sub and the student is stuck with a long-term sub for 6, 8, 10 weeks. Or the principals can do what they believe is the right thing, which is have the classes be larger, way larger, but with a certified, qualified teacher until such time as they're allowed to hire somebody. What happens then is that all the schedules get rearranged at 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 8 weeks down the road. We're already hearing that that is happening again this year. How, who, and why won't people listen when the principals have a track record of knowing what they need? They're not trying to cheat the system. They know they need X number of science teachers. They know they need X number of math teachers. And as much as we'd like for it to divide out evenly, you know, that every class has 21 gifted and that they come into us in blocks like that, it doesn't happen that way. So it's not the way you can identify and plan on your staffing. I don't know if that is making sense what I'm saying, but we've got to start the school year with teachers in buildings, and they need to be hired now. If we know we've got 7% less already, and we know that schools have teachers that have turned in retirement, teachers that have turned in resignations, and we're already 7% down. Why can't our principals hire the good cream of the crop teachers that are out there right now, not in August?
I can't speak but specifically to your point, but last year, the DeKalb School District cut its budget by $90 million. 90. We were where Cobb is this year. This drives, unless you believe that people at the central office just don't like the folk at Lakeside and try to create chaos, which I hope that's not the case. Now that's an option.
I don't believe that, but I do believe
But what I'm saying to you is, and one of the things I've noticed as I travel around, one of the jobs we didn't do well in the past is that we did not educate and inform and connect budget staffing decisions to revenue loss. And I talked to so many employees, and the impression I received that because we did not educate, we did not inform, we didn't do a good job with budget explanation, that they are at a loss as to why decisions like that are being made, right? But it's tied back to you can't spend dollars you do not have. Now, could we have better invested the dollars we did have in a way? Yeah.
But we eventually did spend them because we got the teachers as the process.
Well, but what happened is, see, and it came up last night, at first, our budget office, and I say I wasn't here, but it's mine now, was under the impression that that would be a 6% decrease in revenue ad valorem taxes. That was the way the budget was built. Because when we asked the question, the county told us expect 6, right? It turned out to be 9. We found out about it in the middle of the fiscal year. There is a huge difference between 9 and 6 in terms of a decline in revenue. And I'm not trying to give you an excuse or to say that what was done was right, but I am trying to share with you an explanation as to why it was done. Now, did we explain this to you? No.
But I think the question is that the staffing at the schoolhouse has to be done first. And then we need to find money for all the other things.
But that's the new budget directive. And that's what I said, but that's what I said at the beginning of the meeting. The board directed last night, from my knowledge, the first time that that is the priority. Prior to that, what you're saying was not the stated priority of the DeKalb School Board. Now, it should have been, but it was not. And so consequently, people budgeted and appropriated based on what they thought the priorities were.
So if that's the priority, as stated last night, can you then go direct your people to give our principals the staffing that they need for this coming year to free them up to get the staff in the building? If that's going to be the priority, why can't we start that now?
But, and this is what I'm saying, there are numerous priorities associated with improving academic performance. That will be one of them. I can't say to you that absolutely that'll be resolved. Because also remember now, 16 million in new costs, revenue flat. So we're starting FY14 with a $16 million deficit. It all comes, and I'll come right back to you. I want to recognize Ms. Nancy Justice. I didn't see her. She was sitting behind this gentleman. Y'all give her a hand. That was school board. Give Nancy a hand. I didn't see her. How are you?
I'm doing great. Nice to meet you.
All right, good. Yes, ma'am.
Just to kind of elaborate to what I can address a little bit. We need to know that this year the process is different for staffing schools. And because there was a problem with Tucker and Lakeside, as I walked in the first day last year, you need to know that allotment meetings are happening next week. I will be present at all of my school's allotment meetings to make sure that it's not underestimated. And I believe last year there was also a piece of, I have one school, I have Drew with this on a 4-block schedule, and I have others that are 7. And so I think that there was a mix-up also with Tucker and with Lakeside, thinking that they were a 4x4, and so there was some underestimation of teachers needed with that. But I assure you there is a different process in place this year. So we will start the school year on a good note.
Thank you.
I think I'm a Lakeside School Council Chair. This brings this excellent. And I agree. But I think part of the process of what Barbara's referring to is that what ends up happening is that at the end of the school year, using Henderson as an example, Miss Allen will know how many incoming 6th graders are going to come, along with how many outgoing 8th graders are going out. The number for the 6th grader each year continues to rise. And what she has been told in the past is that, okay, well, that's not the correct number, even though we know it is the correct number from all the feeder schools, and you have to decrease your staff at the end of the year. Well, you have to let teachers go. And then you come to the beginning of the school year, the numbers that we already knew were correct to begin with bear out to be true, and then she's short-staffed. When really, if we could trust the feeder school numbers, which we can, and trust the principal, which we can, to say this is what's coming in, and it's about the same number each year, then we wouldn't have to lose teachers and then try and hire them back. And I don't know how that fits into the budget process, but I'm talking about in the schoolhouse, you know you're going to have 1,500 kids coming in for the school year total, regardless of coming out and coming in. You know that number, and you know it to be true because you're getting the information from the feeder schools. And you also know who's coming in from the private schools. Well, then the county is saying, you're really only gonna have 1,200. So we're gonna short you of teachers. Then you come back, school year starts, there's 1,500 kids, just like they were told. And that's the process that I think needs to be addressed and changed so that those teachers can stay in place and that sixth graders that come into the school that are then put on teams that are enlarged don't have to wait until 10 weeks into the school year to be split from 2-team teachers to 4-team teachers. And then you lose an opportunity to hire the cream of the crop. That's where I think the issue is, if I'm explaining what Barbara's saying correctly.
And I'm hearing you, thank you, Ms. Brixton, but let me tell you what I have found, and it's just from where I see it. The complaints I have heard, the real fundamental driving point of decision was budget. If there was a way to save $1, it was done. You not having the teachers or staff you need, at the end of the day, if you really drill down to the bottom, you have to finance it in order to do it. And that is and that's been my biggest challenge. This is why I've said over and over and over again, you can't have a quality system unless we get our budget in order. Because we got people in the budget, last year, I'm just telling you, $90 million in one budget cycle. That's what's going on in Carr. Read the paper today. Read the paper today. What they are going through is what we went through last year. And they are, because they didn't accept the superintendent's recommendation, the good news in Carr is they got a fund balance that they can reach into the finance. The bad news for the cab is what? We didn't have one. There was one way out of this morass. And it was cutting, not really knowing what the ultimate outcome would be. Because no one had ever cut that much money at one time in one fiscal year. Yes, sir, you've been very patient. Yes, sir, right here in front.
Good morning, Michael. I'm Al Herman I'm an officer with the Green Party of DeKalb County and a resident of this neighborhood for about 20 years. And I first want to thank you for coming here to hear and respond to our concerns today. It's an opportunity for everyone to acknowledge Mr. Thurmond. But that didn't go over well. Oh, there it is.
Listen, I understood I was not running for homecoming queen. and listen, by the time we're through, and it's interesting, folks say, well, you're going to listen, I'm going to be the most unpopular guy in DeKalb County. I'm just telling you. I knew it coming in, I'll know it going out. You're not going to be totally happy and no one else. But the decisions will have to be made and they will be made. If we're going to have 3 and 4 or 5 years from now, a quality district. Everyone will not like what will be asked of them in terms of sacrifice. I'm just telling you. No one will be totally happy. But I'm not seeking happy. We want a quality, prosperous, achieving district. I didn't mean to cut you off, sir.
You did. The concern that brings me here today is the issue of the proposed T-Mobile cell phone towers to be constructed on school properties here in DeKalb County. The World Health Organization has classified the threat of this type of RF radiation as being potentially significant carcinogenic. And Carla Drenner, Representative Carla Drenner, who has a PhD in environmental sciences, was so concerned, she sponsored a referendum here countywide last year that voters responded to overwhelmingly rejecting the concept of construction of cell phone towers on our school property. Now, I understand that you're new to this job, and maybe you weren't informed of that. My question is two-part. One, did you know about the opposition, the community opposition to cell phone towers? And it's my understanding that you signed a permit for the construction of a cell phone tower on Lakeside High School, and I was curious why.
Well, the reason why is the board, the DeKalb School Board, voted in favor of placing the towers on those campuses. The DeKalb School Board is my employer. And so if they voted in the affirmative, which they did, then I am obligated either to follow that direction or resign. I don't have a choice to do it or not do it. And if I choose not to do it, then my only response will be to walk away. I'm not doing that at this point in time. That was a decision of the school board of DeKalb County. It was not my decision.
Is that the board the governor removed?
No, it was the board prior to that. It was the board prior to the board that was removed a month ago. And that was it. That was just a decision of the board.
Because I understand the budget problems that the school district is going through, but the compensation is a mere pittance. It's not even a response to the issue. It's less than $2,500 per tower for the life of the towers, and there's no guarantee that it's going to be transferred or paid to the school district or the schools. So.
No, and I understand the concern about towers. I understand that it was very controversial. It was discussed in great detail, debated. But at the end of the day, for whatever reason, and I can't articulate as to the reasons, that the previous board voted to have the towers installed. Now, I do understand that Representative Driller and some county commissioners are concerned about it, and they may be able to provide some resolution that you might be more happy with. But at this point, my hands are tied because my employers have voted. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. Thank you for coming back after your last visit to Oakville. We appreciate you showing back up.
What happened at Lavista?
Everyone was very enthusiastic at that meeting, so thank you.
Oh, that's right. And I'm used to it. Y'all know.
Well, two things. One is with respect to the number of kids coming in and the number of children and the lack of teachers. One thing I would hope that the board and everyone would look at next year is a better way to check proof of residence. Because we see lots of kids coming to Lakeside all the time with the net tags and other county tags. And the kids who are friends of my children talk about, the long drive they have home and such. And so I would hope that you would do something to help that situation. Because we're always overcrowded because of many kids who want to come to our schools, and you don't want to deny them a good education, but there's got to be a better way. The other is that when my older son started DeKalb, my friends always told me to never write any DeKalb calendar dates in pen because they always change. And so I wonder, with the new calendar, I noticed there were no furlough days and no other potential dates added yet. Wondered when the final calendar will be implemented.
When we implement the final budget, I think that would be the case. But there are no plans that I'm aware of adding additional furlough days. Actually, we're trying to move in the opposite direction, but hopefully things won't deteriorate further. Yes, ma'am.
With the new focus on the schools and the classrooms, do you expect, or should we expect to have smaller class sizes?
That's a budget issue. The class sizes were increased, right, to save money. It's all, but that's why we can never allow ourselves put us in this financial condition. It affects any and everything. That's why I'm encouraging you all, come to the budget hearing. Familiarize yourself with the budget. It drives every decision that's made in a school district. It just does. And that's another example of it, the increase in class sizes. Because if you have larger class sizes, you need fewer teachers. 85% of the budget is personnel. And if you're going to cut the budget, you cut personnel. And that's how the budget was balanced. Unfortunately, it was focused too much on the academic side of the operation, which is to your point. That has changed, I do believe. I'm convinced. I know it's changed at the superintendent's office. I'm convinced it's changed with the board at the board level. And I think you're going to see a difference. Now, you're going to see a difference with a budget that's already $16 million in deficit. We don't have $50 million to show you and reduce the class sizes and staff up all the classrooms. So you're going to see it in an incremental way, only because we have limited resources. But we're not trying to get it all. I'm not trying to get it all done this year, because I know it's not reasonable and rational. What we can do is set the stage for future growth and opportunity. Yes, sir. You've been very patient.
Thank you. Tim McGee, parent of 2 children, one in Henderson, one in Kittredge. You said earlier there were 14,000 district employees. If you do the math on that, that's 7 employees for every child. Okay, seven children for every employee. But obviously nobody's got a classroom size that's 7 students per teacher. We've got way too many people who are, whether they're physically located in the central office or in a school, there are way too many people that are being paid that are not classroom teachers. Is your budget going to cut the number of people who are employed by the CAD county that are not classroom teachers?
Well, obviously, if we're going to cut, the only thing you can cut is employees. You can't, I mean, you can close some schools, and that's on the horizon, but we just cut $90 million from the budget. And I understand your need and your desire and your concern, but you have to acknowledge that that's what occurred. And that's why we're having concerns about classroom size and staffing in the school. So we can continue to cut. Teachers, some of you people, bus drivers, you still got to have bus drivers. You got to have cooks to cook the food. You have to have custodians. I mean, you have to have support personnel for your classroom instruction. The central office, 6%. That will be smaller. Now, at some point, and a gentleman said it, one of the school board members said it last night, at some point you get to a point where not only do you cut, you have to recognize that this is no longer a reasonable function that we need to be involved in, right? But then where is that? I was at the Thurmond Science Center, and they were concerned they lost 50% of their budget last year. Some would argue, and some did argue, that that's not a fundamental need or resource for this district. That's how they ended up with it, and they wanted more money. The point I'm saying to you is that everybody will sacrifice something. No magic wand, we won't correct it all in FY14, but you will see a difference in direction, which is all I can promise you. And I ask you to hold me to it. You all have been there, and I'll take one more, and then I gotta go to Latonia.
I appreciate you televising the board meetings, the committees of the whole, that type of thing that has gone on, because in the past, only the standard meetings were televised, and not everybody can get over there every time. So I have watched when you had the meeting with Sachs, and the meeting last night about the budget. The concern I have with the talk about the central office and the sizing of it is that if you make it smaller, but the way you make it smaller is by coding people out to the school and not a central office person. And I know that there's a lot of different ways to do it based on what they said last night with all the different counties, and it's hard to compare. But if the result is you don't cut anybody, but they get coded somewhere else, and class sizes are still the same and we still have the same number of teachers, then I don't think that's helpful.
No, I wouldn't either if that's what would occur, but I don't think that's what's going to occur. You know, because that would assume that the only reason we're doing it is to protect a job of a person, but what the board wanted was improve academic achievement. And if you do it under that particular rubric that you suggested, then that would not result in increased academic achievement. And I don't think the board will approve a budget presented to them in that vein.
Well, last year, a lot of people got coded a different way, so they got moved. It was very hard to determine, were there any cuts, or did people just get shuffled? So shuffling isn't going to work, in my opinion.
We will learn from last year. I won't dwell on it. I'm not responsible for it. And one thing I ask is that last year was last year. I'm a totally different person. And the only suggestion, the only request I have for you is to judge me by me and not by what may have occurred prior to my coming. Is that fair? Last year, the superintendent was not here explaining to you what the cuts were, right? Or trying to attempting to asking you to come and engage so you will know more about what happened and why it happened and when it happened. So there's a difference, and I hope you all appreciate the difference. I thank you for you all for coming. Now, one thing I need to ask you all to do, I need your help. I'm back to parental involvement, and I need for all of us in this district to recognize that first, self-interest is good. My neighborhood, my school, my district. But we will not succeed, we will not progress until we recognize that it's our district. All of our children will have an opportunity for success. And I'm not asking you to leave your homes and leave your neighborhood, but at least I'm asking for an acknowledgement of the reality of that. Because that's what I am here as a superintendent for the district. And I have to use that in my analysis in terms of the decisions that I make. I thank you all for your attention, and I thank you for your commitment, and I thank you for allowing us to educate your children. Thank you.